If you sort of rolled up to Çatalhöyük 9,000 years ago, as you came across the landscape, you see this great mound in the distance, where around 7,000 BC, about 8,000 people started to live together in a very densely packed community. They lived so closely together that they had no streets, so they moved around on the roofs of houses and went down ladders through the houses. So much had to be invented. All these processes that make up a city life. We're just digging up at the moment the first mirrors, so people had to invent mirrors. They had to invent belt hooks, they had to find ways of holding their hair together. It's a very, very innovative time. You can see people trying things out, tinkering with what we take for granted. I think the sort of way that we see the environment was not possible before Çatalhöyük, because the main changes, the main interventions are to do with domestication of plants and animals. Agriculture is the building block of civilization as we understand it. But it also was a trap into which humans got drawn. You ready? The story starts small scale. You'll have to talk to Dr. Jeren about why.
You know how some people think little bunnies are cute? It's the way I see my little plants. We built up a dependency on them, and they built up a dependency on us, and here we are. How? Yeah, okay, I'll try. So, you really understand it when you actually see what happens to grass. I've got domesticated, and I've got wild, yeah? And this guy, you don't really even have to pull at it. It'll just fall and sort of break away, yeah? And that's what shattering means. This is their wild seed dispersal mechanism. They'll break away from the ear, they'll fall in the ground, and they'll dig themselves in. But a small portion of the wild shattering ones will actually have non-shattering ears.
Archaeobotanists talk about that as a random event. But then the question is, why did it become selected for? And that's to do with humans. If you're gathering plants from a field, the seed is what you want, so you keep selecting ones that are easy to collect. You're less likely to collect the ones that are shattered. They're all scattered over the place.
Through time, the non-shattering ears became more prevalent, and that's what became domesticated.
But as a sort of unintended offshoot of that, the plants couldn't reproduce themselves anymore. The seeds got stuck onto the stalk of the plant.
We actually have to physically go and pull the ears apart. If you had a fully ripe ear and you didn't pick it or you didn't harvest it, it might actually rot on the ear.
So the plant is entirely now dependent on humans. And so if humans want to continue depending on that plant, they get drawn into planting it and looking after it. The first entanglement. sowing and ploughing and harvesting and winnowing and grinding. It's all just more work. And one way of dealing with the problem of needing more work is that you just increase your population size. All around the world, whether it's maize or yams, whenever you get agriculture, you get increases of people. One way of looking at it is that what really is going on here is that the domestic plants are doing really well out of this. And what they've done is they've domesticated us. They've forced us to look after them. Entanglement. That dual process that started in the Neolithic. We got dragged into doing things, and we had to work harder to do those things. And in order to work harder, we invented new technologies. And those technologies involved us working yet harder or doing more complex things. And therefore we had to create more technologies. And so there's a spiral between humans and technologies. Agriculture, it definitely comes with its negatives. Urbanism, pollution, environmental degradation. But, as soon as we get agriculture, you see a decline in health on the skeletons. Partly to do with the less diverse diet, but it's also to do with diseases jumping across from animals. These incredible negatives, but they just carry on doing the same thing. On and on in an endless spiral.
It's between 7,000 and 6,000 BC. This specific person, I will not know but, to pinpoint an exact date, but long time. Humans started to modify their environment. The domestication of both plants and animals. Yeah, big changes that of course affects culturally, biologically, all of us. You think about your position with respect of all the millennia that preceded us, and you wonder about possible changes on the future. You cannot stop this ability of our species to change. It's pretty much like trying to stop a river.
I think we have to accept that that's one of the distinctive things about us, is that we are sort of manically concerned with temporality and change. And so, we do things and then the consequences emerge later. So
It's looks like a male, maybe around his late 30s.
The question is whether we can go on finding a technological solution. And that's the great worry. Is that sustainable long term? The lesson from Çatalhöyük is that humans are very good at inventing things, but they're very, very bad at working out what the implications are. You know, we don't have a long-term vision. Particularly nowadays, we don't have a sense of the long-term impacts of what we do. And I think that's something that archaeologists can really point to, really long-term. Do we sort of pull back from this and say, you know, technological change is not going to be the answer. We have to change ourselves. Yeah, change our way of being, to reorient ourselves and what our wants and demands are, and trying to reevaluate what it is to lead a fulfilled and happy life, and maybe one that has instant change and activity isn't as good as one that has more stability and continuity.